Mark never expected that a quiet evening at home would become the moment his entire reality collapsed. It began with a single sentence from Emily, spoken casually as if it were harmless. She said that everyone cheats because monogamy is just an illusion. Mark tried to laugh it off, hoping she was joking or just venting a strange idea. But something in her tone made him ask the question he never thought he'd ask. He asked if she had ever cheated on him. Emily didn't hesitate or look away. She admitted she'd been seeing another man for months. She told him the man was married and had 3 kids. In that instant, Mark felt the floor drop beneath him. The woman he trusted had shattered everything with a confession said as calmly as if it meant nothing. And that was only the beginning of the truth waiting to unravel. Emily didn't cry or apologize after her confession. She sat on the couch as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Mark felt his chest tighten as he tried to understand how she could speak so casually about destroying their relationship. Emily began explaining her belief that monogamy was outdated. She claimed that humans weren't meant to stay with one partner forever. Mark listened in disbelief, wondering if she was saying these things to justify what she'd done. She insisted her affair wasn't a betrayal, but a natural expression of desire. Mark felt anger rising as she spoke about love like it was a disposable emotion. He reminded her of the promises they made when they moved in together. Emily only shrugged and said she never believed people could truly stay loyal. Mark asked her directly how long the affair had lasted. Emily answered without hesitation. 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of pretending to love him while building a secret life with someone else. Mark tried to stay calm while the truth burned through him. He asked if the affair started before or after they moved in together. Emily admitted it started almost immediately after the move. Mark felt the weight of every memory from that period crashing down. The late nights at work now made sense. The sudden disinterest in intimacy also made sense. The way she smiled at her phone and brushed it off as jokes with coworkers suddenly felt like sharp blades in his mind. Emily kept justifying her actions as if she were giving a lecture instead of confessing. She said her connection with David felt exciting and freeing. She claimed Mark was too routine and predictable. Mark clenched his fists but said nothing. He couldn't understand how she could speak so cruelly while sitting in the home they built together. He asked if David ever planned to leave his wife. Emily rolled her eyes and said his marriage was basically over anyway. Mark knew that was a lie people in affairs told themselves to avoid guilt. He asked if she ever considered how her actions affected Sarah, the wife who had just survived cancer. Emily dismissed the question entirely. She said Sarah would be fine because she was strong enough to handle anything. Mark felt sick hearing how detached Emily sounded. He realized Emily wasn't just unfaithful. She lacked empathy for anyone she hurt. The room felt colder as the conversation stretched on. Emily tried shifting blame onto Mark. She said he worked too much and didn't notice her unhappiness. Mark reminded her that she never once mentioned feeling neglected. Emily said it didn't matter because desire didn't need reasons. Mark finally asked her to pack her things. Emily looked shocked, as if she expected him to simply accept the situation. She asked where she was supposed to go. Mark told her it wasn't his problem anymore. Emily tried arguing that they could redefine their relationship. Mark refused to listen to anything more. He told her the trust was destroyed and there was nothing left to save. Emily left the house slowly, still trying to justify her affair as something natural. Mark closed the door behind her and felt the silence wrap around him. For the first time in months, he saw the truth clearly. The relationship he thought he had never truly existed. And now, he was finally facing the reality she had been hiding for nearly a year. The house felt painfully quiet after Emily left. Mark tried to distract himself, but every corner of the home reminded him of her lies. He sat at his desk, attempting to force his mind into work, when a familiar sound chimed from his computer. It was the sync notification from the shared cloud account. Emily had forgotten that her iPad synced automatically to the desktop. Mark hesitated before opening it. A part of him feared seeing more than he could handle. But the fear was nothing compared to the need for the truth. He clicked on the message thread, labeled with David's name. The window expanded, and the screen filled with months of conversations. The first message he read felt like a punch to the stomach. It was Emily confirming a hotel reservation. She told David she couldn't wait to feel alive again. Mark scrolled further and saw Emily mocking Sarah, the woman battling through cancer recovery. Emily called her weak and boring. Mark felt disgust rising in his throat. He continued reading, even though every word felt like glass cutting into him. There were discussions of secret meetings. There were pictures Emily sent from the apartment while Mark was at work. There were conversations laying out how David planned to hide assets before filing for divorce. Emily encouraged him and even helped brainstorm ways to move money without raising suspicion. The betrayal reached deeper than Mark ever imagined. It wasn't just infidelity. It was manipulation, deceit, and cruelty directed at people who didn't deserve it. Mark found messages where Emily completed assignments for David. She wrote reports for him, drafted client emails, even edited confidential documents. She bragged about doing his work because it made her feel closer to him. David responded with flirtation and vague promises about their future. Promises Mark recognized instantly as lies. He looked through the timestamps. During the same weeks she claimed to be emotionally exhausted, she was booking hotels. On the nights she said she needed space, she was sending pictures to David from the passenger seat of his car. Mark's hands trembled as he saved every message. He organized them into folders labeled by month. He downloaded screenshots, voice notes, and attachments. The more he gathered, the clearer the picture became. Emily wasn't a victim of loneliness or confusion. She was an active participant in a long-term plan to dismantle another woman's marriage. Mark leaned back, staring at the evidence. He remembered the nights Emily told him she loved him. He remembered the moments she asked him to trust her. Those memories now felt like scenes from someone else's life. Mark checked one final folder and found conversations about a weekend getaway to a lake house. Emily said she couldn't wait to stay somewhere only David's real partner was allowed. Mark exhaled slowly, feeling everything inside him collapse again. There was no remorse in anything she wrote. No hesitation. No humanity. Mark closed the laptop and rested his head in his hands. He knew he could no longer pretend this was a simple betrayal. It was something far darker. And the truth needed to reach the one person who deserved it most. Mark stared at the screen, the weight of the evidence pressing down on him. He knew he couldn't keep this secret any longer. Sarah had the right to know the truth about her husband. He opened his email and drafted a message carefully. Every attachment, every screenshot, every message thread was included. He wrote a brief note explaining what he had discovered and how he had obtained the information. Mark hesitated for a moment before hitting send, knowing there was no turning back. Within minutes, he received a response. It was Sarah, and her tone was a mixture of shock and determination. She thanked him for coming forward and promised to take action immediately. Mark watched as the next few hours unfolded like a storm. Sarah forwarded the evidence to David's company, his clients, and the board of directors. She even posted a version on LinkedIn, exposing the deception publicly. Emily's reaction came swiftly. She tried calling and texting Mark repeatedly, but he ignored every attempt. Her panic was evident in the messages she left. She pleaded for explanations, claimed she was misunderstood, and begged him to take the evidence down. Mark didn't respond. The consequences were already in motion. Emily lost her job within days. Her reputation, built over years, began to crumble in a matter of hours. Colleagues whispered, clients questioned her integrity, and the public exposure made it impossible for her to maintain any professional credibility. Mark watched silently, feeling a complex mixture of relief and sadness. He hadn't wanted this destruction for her, but justice needed to be served. David, meanwhile, was forced to confront his own actions. The company froze his accounts, and inquiries into his financial dealings began immediately. Sarah worked quickly with lawyers, preparing for divorce and securing her assets. Mark knew that Emily had underestimated the consequences of her choices. She thought she could manipulate situations without facing repercussions. He realized she had no understanding of accountability. As the days passed, Mark stayed out of the public eye. He allowed Sarah to handle the fallout, trusting her judgment completely. Emily's attempts to justify herself became increasingly desperate. She posted on social media, tried to reach mutual friends, and even attempted to contact David's clients. Nothing reversed the damage. Mark continued documenting everything, keeping careful records in case further legal actions were needed. He knew the evidence would protect not only Sarah, but also himself from any false claims. The realization hit him clearly. Emily had not just betrayed him. She had jeopardized multiple lives with her selfishness. Mark felt a sense of responsibility to ensure that the truth reached those who deserved it. He understood now that inaction would have made him complicit. Every detail mattered, every message mattered, and every truth had to be exposed. By the end of the week, Emily's panic turned to despair. She saw the full scope of her choices and the destruction she had caused. Mark watched quietly as the dominoes fell, knowing that this was the only way to make things right. Justice, he realized, was not about revenge. It was about ensuring accountability and protecting those who had been wronged. And in that moment, Mark felt the first sense of clarity he had experienced since Emily's confession. He had acted decisively, and the truth was finally in motion. Emily appeared at Mark's doorstep without warning. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes burned with anger. She accused him of ruining her life and taking everything away. Mark remained calm, refusing to respond to her accusations immediately. He let her words hang in the air before speaking. He told her that she had destroyed her own life. He reminded her of the choices she had made and the people she had hurt. David's accounts were frozen. Sarah was moving forward with divorce, and the evidence she had left behind was now public. Emily's pleas became more frantic as she tried to shift blame back onto him. She claimed he had overreacted and exaggerated the situation. Mark shook his head, explaining that he had simply exposed the truth. He recounted the months of deceit, the hidden messages, and the secret meetings with David. Every lie she had told, every manipulation, had led them to this point. Emily's voice wavered as she demanded he forgive her and give her another chance. Mark looked at her steadily, refusing to be swayed. He told her that forgiveness was meaningless without accountability. Emily tried to appeal to his emotions, saying she was scared and alone. Mark reminded her that fear didn't erase responsibility. He spoke about Sarah and the children, about the damage she had caused to innocent lives. Emily's expression shifted from anger to desperation. She asked what she was supposed to do now, where she was supposed to go. Mark told her that it was time for her to face the consequences. She could no longer rely on anyone to clean up her mess. Emily begged him to at least help her navigate the situation with David. Mark refused, saying that her actions were her own and she needed to learn from them. He explained that David's downfall was a result of his own choices, and Emily had only accelerated it. Her career was crumbling, her reputation destroyed, and there was no turning back. Emily began to cry harder, realizing that Mark would not be her savior. He reminded her that everything she had worked for was now at risk because she had chosen deceit over honesty. She tried one last time to manipulate him with promises to change. Mark listened silently and then calmly said that change could not erase the past. He told her that rebuilding trust would take far more than empty words. Emily collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and defeated. Mark stood quietly, watching her confront the reality she had created. He emphasized that she was responsible for her own life, and no one else could fix it for her. Emily's desperation turned to hopelessness as she realized David had abandoned her, and she had no allies left. Mark told her that the world was now judging her actions as they truly were. She could no longer hide behind lies or excuses. Mark walked to the door and told her that it was time to leave. Emily finally stood and left, shoulders slumped, defeated and broken. Mark closed the door behind her, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. The house was silent again, but this time it felt different. The weight of deception had been lifted, and Mark knew he had acted correctly. Emily was facing the consequences of her own choices, and he could finally begin to move forward. He realized that some lessons were harsh, but necessary. Trust could not be rebuilt once it was completely destroyed. And for Mark, it was time to reclaim his life and let the truth stand on its own. A few days later, Mark received a call from Sarah. Her voice was calm, but carried a weight of relief. She began by thanking him sincerely for coming forward and exposing the truth. She said that, without his intervention, the situation could have been far worse. Mark listened quietly, feeling a sense of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. Sarah then began to reveal what had unfolded since she received the evidence. She told him that David was under investigation for tax evasion. The authorities had already frozen his accounts and were examining his financial records. Mark felt a chill run down his spine, realizing the full consequences of the affair and deception. Sarah continued, explaining that Emily was in serious trouble as well. By doing David's work and signing documents on his behalf, she had committed legal violations. Her actions could potentially lead to criminal charges, or at least civil liability. Mark listened carefully, understanding that Emily's attempts to manipulate the situation had completely backfired. Sarah then shared details about David's history. Over the past 10 years, he had been unfaithful to Sarah at least 8 times. The betrayal was systematic, and Emily had only become part of a long pattern of deception. Mark realized that the man he had been indirectly confronting through Emily had a history of harming others. Sarah paused, then advised Mark directly. She said, "Don't ever let Emily back into your life." Mark nodded silently, knowing that her warning was more than reasonable. He could never trust Emily again, and there was no reason to reopen old wounds. Sarah emphasized that his role in exposing the truth had helped her and her children immensely. She said that she now had control over her life, her finances, and her future. Mark felt a quiet pride knowing that his actions had real, tangible effects on people who truly deserved honesty and protection. Sarah shared that legal measures were being taken quickly. David could no longer hide behind lies or wealth. Emily's reputation and career were ruined, leaving her isolated and facing serious consequences. Mark realized that the fallout was unavoidable, and justice was finally being served. Sarah's voice softened as she expressed gratitude once more. She said that Mark had acted responsibly, and his integrity had made a real difference. Mark felt relief and closure, knowing that he had done the right thing. He realized that sometimes doing the right thing required courage, patience, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Sarah concluded the call by telling Mark that he should focus on his own life now. She said he deserved peace, trust, and happiness after everything he had endured. Mark hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of relief and empowerment. He reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. The deception, betrayal, and chaos had been overwhelming. But the truth had prevailed, and the people who had been wronged were now protected. Mark finally allowed himself to envision a future without Emily's lies. He knew he could start again, free from manipulation and deceit. For the first time in months, he felt clarity and purpose. The call with Sarah confirmed that he had made a lasting, positive impact. Justice had been served, and he could move forward with his life knowing he had acted honorably. The lessons were harsh but necessary. Mark was ready to embrace the next chapter, leaving betrayal and lies behind. 2 months later, the consequences of the affair and deception became fully clear. David had been arrested for tax evasion after the authorities completed their investigation. His accounts remained frozen, and legal proceedings against him were underway. Sarah had secured a favorable outcome in her divorce. She now had full custody of her children and control over all shared assets. Her home was safe, her finances restored, and she even signed a publishing deal for a book about her experience. Mark followed the developments quietly, relieved to see justice being served. Emily, on the other hand, faced a very different reality. Her attempts to contest any part of the situation had failed. Her career was effectively over, as no employer would trust her after her actions came to light. She returned to her hometown, taking a low-profile job in her father's store. Even there, the shadow of her past mistakes lingered. She sent Mark a final email, filled with blame and resentment. She claimed that everyone around her had deceived her. She insisted that Mark would eventually stop trusting anyone because of what had happened. Mark read the email calmly and did not respond. He realized that engagement with her anger and denial would serve no purpose. Instead, he focused on rebuilding his life and maintaining healthy relationships. Mark had started seeing Anna, a kind and supportive woman who helped him regain trust in love. Their relationship was built on honesty, respect, and mutual understanding. Mark felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He no longer carried the emotional weight of Emily's betrayal. The experience had taught him to recognize true character and value trust above all else. Meanwhile, Sarah's children thrived in a stable and loving environment. They were beginning to recover from the emotional turmoil caused by their father and Emily's actions. Sarah was able to dedicate herself fully to her children and her personal growth. Mark remained a supportive friend to Sarah, having played a crucial role in helping her uncover the truth. Emily and David were left to confront the consequences of their own choices. Their betrayal had cost them everything: relationships, careers, and freedom. Mark often reflected on how quickly trust could be broken and how important it was to recognize character early. He had learned that love without honesty was a fragile illusion. The ordeal had reshaped his perspective on relationships and human behavior. Mark's focus shifted toward building a life centered on integrity and genuine connection. He devoted himself to work and the people who had proven trustworthy. Emily's attempts to influence or manipulate him were no longer possible. Her world had become small and constrained by the results of her own decisions. David faced not only legal consequences, but also the collapse of his reputation and social standing. Mark observed the unfolding events with a sense of closure. He understood that everyone must face the outcomes of their choices. The past no longer held power over him. Mark embraced his new life fully, committed to honesty and meaningful connections. He recognized that while betrayal could devastate, truth and integrity ultimately restore balance. Sarah and her children flourished, free from the shadows of deceit. Mark's relationship with Anna grew steadily, offering hope and trust for the future. Emily and David served as stark reminders of the cost of selfishness and dishonesty. Mark finally felt a profound sense of resolution and peace. Life had moved forward, and he was ready to thrive in a world built on truth and respect. Mark reflected on everything that had happened and the lessons he had learned. Not everyone betrays, and trust is a choice that must be given carefully. He realized the value of recognizing people's true character before investing his heart. Sarah and her children were living happily, free from deception and manipulation. They had rebuilt their lives and found stability and security. Mark had also begun a new chapter with Anna, a relationship built on honesty and respect. He felt peace and hope for the first time in a long while. Emily and David were left to face the consequences of their own decisions. Their lies, selfishness, and betrayals had cost them everything they once had. Mark understood that actions have consequences and that justice often comes in ways people cannot anticipate. He focused on moving forward, embracing a life of integrity and meaningful connections. The pain and betrayal no longer controlled him. He had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to trust again, but with discernment. Life had restored balance, rewarding those who acted with honesty and responsibility. Mark felt grateful for the clarity he had gained and the opportunity to start anew. He knew that the past could not be changed, but the future was his to build. With lessons learned and trust renewed in the right people, he embraced the next chapter of his life fully and confidently.